want to share your presentation, Jan? Perfect. So here it is. Can you all see it?
Yeah.
And Jan, you can start.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Thank you, Johanna, for that nice introduction. And welcome, everybody, and greetings from Jeju Island in Korea. I'm just really delighted to be at this gathering of ICYA, ICYE staff and volunteers. And I'm very, as you can tell, our Siemens family is well represented here, as well as our good friends for over 50 years, the Ghostman family. A big thanks to Stefan Langenberg for inviting this old alumnus of ICYE to share some of my experiences as a conflict resolution practitioner with this group. And most importantly, I want to give a big congratulations to all the talented and dedicated ICYA staff and volunteers on the 75th anniversary of the program. Your vital work literally transforms the lives of thousands of participants in your program over the decade, and it's deeply appreciated. As Johanna referred to it, 61 years ago, this program brought an 18-year-old Korean-American city boy from San Francisco to Heiligenstätten by Itzehoe, a small village in Schleswig-Holstein, for a life-transforming 12 months. I came into this pastor's family of 12 children, and this family has become truly our second family for over 6 decades. And over the years, we have grown ever closer, sharing our happiness, our tragedies with each other, like any normal blood-related family. Oltmann and I were ICYE brothers in 1962, and this is what started our family Siemens tie. Next. Anya, next.
It's Johanna because I couldn't do it. Johanna?
Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, good. All right, my Siemens relatives will recognize this. This was in 1963, 61 years ago, Hauke, who was on this call. This was Hauke's wedding. And this was the Siemens family of 12 brothers and sisters plus one. Okay, and the next slide. It didn't take long for our family to expand exponentially. Here's a family gathering kind of in Vangaroge in 2013. I have to say that so many of my life choices have been possible because of this exchange student year, living in a different culture from the one I grew up. It has influenced how I think about the world, its people, who I married, and even where Brenda and I ended up living, like in Vietnam and in Korea now for 8 years. This exchange year also had a profound influence on my moral compass to always think globally. So I want to thank all of you at ICYA for this work. May your work continue to have impact on world peace, one person at a time. My choice to make conflict resolution, intercultural communication, negotiation, and mediation my life's work was strongly influenced by this 1 year in Germany in 1962. Just learning to live in a family of 12 children and to struggle to accept the dynamics, traumas, and experiences of a family that had experienced the war firsthand, I think pushed me in this direction. Next slide, please. The title of my talk today is The Simple Magic of Mediation. Simple because anyone can learn the process of mediation, including school children. Magic because it can literally transform how we resolve conflict. Next slide. Conflict can be resolved using 3 different approaches: power, rights or laws, or interests. With power struggles, wars, coups, strikes, one side wins, the other loses. The impacted party has little or no control over the outcome. When conflict is decided by rights or law, a judge, jury, or arbitrator decides the outcome based on their interpretation of the law. And this is very common in all societies, but it's also generally viewed as a win-lose process. Interest-based resolution is what we are all interested in. It can be as simple as a conversation, negotiations, and mediation. And it's the only approach that allows a win-win solution because both sides' interests, both sides' concerns are addressed. And this is where the impacted party has the most control over the outcome. So in stable societies, decisions are made mainly on interest and the basis of law. In a unstable society, this system is reversed in its priority. Next slide, please. Now, looking at this chart, all the green options, everything written in green, is based on people resolving conflicts by sharing their interests and concerns with each other and trying to solve a problem jointly. So starting on the very left with conversations, facilitation, negotiations, mediation, and non-binding arbitration. These are all what we call interest-based processes. As you move further over the spectrum, you see rights-based processes like arbitration in courts, where you have winners and losers, and then at the very end, the most extreme, power-based options.
Durch kommen immer solche Bilder, wo gerade spricht, worüber. Und das als ein Bild hier so. Die verschiedenen Prozesse für Mediation.
Okay, Edzard, you have to turn off your speaker. Deine Mikrofon kannst du ausschalten, Edzard, sonst hören alle Leute, was du mit
Es ist schon passiert, Jan.
Okay.
I did it, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Next slide, please. So, this is a definition of mediation. Mediation has spread very widely and very quickly because it's intuitive, it's easy to learn, it's effective, and it's very satisfying to practice. So here I would emphasize three things. It's a structured conversation. So it's not just a free-flowing conversation, but it's structured, it's led by someone who is mutually acceptable to both parties who are involved in this conflict. And all decisions are made on a voluntary basis to reach a settlement. Those three things, a structured conversation, acceptable mediator, and voluntary, those are the hallmarks of mediation. And mediation has spread widely because it's intuitive, easy to learn, effective, and satisfying to practice. Everyone has a story they want to share. Everyone feels good when they feel like they are really being heard and understood. Because mediation provides the experience in a safe and controlled environment, people in conflict are willing to open up to hearing each other's stories and concerns and working on a mutual solution together. For over 30 years, mediation has been successfully taught and practiced by school children, retired businessmen, lawyers, housewives, teachers, refugee camp workers in Sudan, soldiers in Sri Lanka, border police in Thailand. And at the FMCS, where I worked for over 20 years, mediators seldom retired because they just love this work. And we joke that we probably had the oldest average workforce in all of the federal agencies in the US. Next slide. I want to take this opportunity to quickly, as briefly as I can, run through the 7 steps to give you some idea about how a mediation session works. There are detailed slides about each of these steps at the end of this PowerPoint, and you can review those if you want to do some homework. So the first step is preparation. The mediator collects background information about the parties, and he arranges a physical space that is comfortable, neutral, and the furniture is arranged in a way that will promote mutual problem solving. So sometimes in a circle. Number two, the mediator introduction. This is very important because most people have not been in a mediation. So the mediator has to explain how the process works and explain some ground rules and get them comfortable with the situation. So he explains the mediator's role, and he says the mediator is a process expert, not a content expert. The content experts are you two people, you, the disputants. You're the content experts because you know what the dispute is about. You know why you're concerned about this conflict. So you are the content experts. I'm just the process expert. Now we have certain ground rules that make mediation safe. When you speak, you have to speak to the mediator first. Speak to me at first. Don't speak to each other because then we'll kind of get into a free-for-all. The second thing is that when one person is speaking, the other one remains silent and doesn't interrupt. Another one is not to call each other names and get into arguments. That's why you speak to the mediator first. And so the other one is that whenever you feel frustrated and you want to take a break or just go out of the room, we can do that at any time. So you're welcome and you're free to take a break anytime you need to just calm down and think about things. And so these are some of the ground rules that we're going to practice here. The last ground rule is that this is a voluntary meeting. So if you feel like it's not going and it's uncomfortable or you don't feel like it's worthwhile, either party is free to leave. The third step is the disputant's opening statements and the mediator feedback. So as a mediator, if I have two people in front of me and they're arguing about say a dispute about the rent, and one's a renter and one's the rentee, I'll look and see which one brought the mediation to me, and also which one of these two people seem to be more upset and want to get something off their chest. And I'll usually go with the one that looks more upset first and let them share. So I'll tell them, look, we're going to each have our turn to talk, but I want you to talk first, and you'll have an uninterrupted statement about your view about why this dispute is going on and what your concerns and problems are about it. And the other person, please sit there quietly, take any notes if you think you have questions. If you disagree, be quiet and you'll have your chance to talk as well. So as each person talks, I'll say, look, I want to hear what brought you to me. What is your conflict and why is it bothering you? I want to hear everything about it. What are your concerns? What are your interests in this dispute? And as they speak, I will use active listening and kind of repeat back to them or rephrase what they're saying in a very respectful manner. And that way they know that I fully grasp what they're trying to tell me. I summarize what they're saying and share and the other side doesn't interrupt, and they sit there and sometimes they get kind of frustrated because the person's not telling it the way they understand it. So when they're finished, I'll turn to the other side and say, thank you for being so patient and listening. I know that we have different perspectives on this conflict. Now I want to hear your side of it and what is a concern that you have. So we do that, we go back and forth. And as they do that, I, as a mediator, am writing notes and assembling an agenda. And I'm trying to identify and prioritize what are the main issues that need to be discussed and need to be resolved. And so when I finish, I repeat the agenda to them and I ask them, now this is what you've told me are the problems that you're facing. Are these the issues? And is there anything else you would like to bring to our meeting? So if they say, nope, that's it, then we move into the next stage of negotiation. And the negotiation is similar to the opening statements, except that I'm now going to ask them a lot of questions. And all my questions are going to be aimed at trying to uncover what are the interests, what are the concerns that are underlying the demands that they have. So the demand might be between a renter and a tenant and the owner of the building. And maybe the concern is that he hasn't made repairs that he thought he was going to make. The bathroom is still leaking, and so he's withholding the rent. So I try to understand what it is that goes beyond just a demand. So his demand is fix my bathroom or I'm not going to pay you the rent. So I'll say, okay, what are your concerns about that? And try to get below that. And also I try to identify any mutual interests the participants may have. And so as they talk about, what their concerns are, I try to draw the parties into a joint problem-solving frame of mind. So I try to get them away from just attacking each other and conflicting with each other, and try to draw them into this mood and into this possible way of trying to solve a problem jointly. So I'll say, okay, well, I know that it's important to a landlord. You've got to pay your lease, you've got to pay your mortgage. So getting the rent is important to you. And I know you take pride in your building, and you take pride that your renters are all satisfied with the way things are going. And so as a renter, I know you took this apartment because it was recommended to you by your friends who live in the same apartment, and you enjoy the neighborliness, you enjoy the atmosphere here, and normally the condition is the apartment is kept in good repair, but I can see that you're upset now that things are not going the way you think they should. So we do this kind of negotiation back and forth, and as we do that, we try to find solutions. And I say, okay, so what can you think of that might happen that would help resolve this problem? And the people kind of put out ideas, and they discuss different ways of handling it. Sometimes you run into a roadblock, and you feel like, okay, we're at a point where we're at an impasse. So now I need to talk to them separately and try to get them to see if I can get more information from either one side or the other side. So you tell them, I'd like to speak to one side for 5 or 10 minutes, and we're going to explore some ideas, and then we'll come back and I'll talk to the other side, but I'll keep quiet about what we talked about, and I'll just use the information to try to bring you closer together. And so finally, when you are able to fashion an agreement with the parties, the mediator summarizes what the agreement is, all the details, who's going to do what, when is it going to happen, and how the plan is going to be implemented. In some cases and some societies, these agreements are then put into writing, but in others, they're only verbally agreed to. So that really depends what society you're working in and how that works. So that's basically kind of a quick and dirty explanation of how these 7 phases of mediation works. I'd like to get into the next slide now and talk about some of the applications of mediation. There's many applications for mediation, and it's used so many places. And this list is incomplete, but it shows a growing application of mediation globally in the past few decades. In Korea, for instance, the growth areas are commercial mediation, school mediation, like between parents and teachers, community versus government disputes, and family or marital conflicts. Next slide. Next slide, please. These benefits are widely known and marketed among the mediation community. They are very convincing to businesses, to NGOs. Go back. Please go back one slide. They are convincing to businesses, NGOs, government institutions, and community groups. One of the big benefits of mediation is that it's so cost efficient, and you get very quick results. So many courts in the United States are referring these disputes first to mediation, because the mediation can take place within a week or two. It'll cost less than $100 for the people who participate, and in over 60% of the cases in civil litigation, these mediations are successful, and so it's a better solution because the parties are in control, and it preserves the face and the dignity of all sides. Next slide. I go to a lot of mediation conferences, and I have gone to them over the year, and I always get this warm and fuzzy vibe whenever I went to a mediation conference. So one day I tried to analyze why, and actually I wrote a speech about it. But I finally realized that my fellow mediators all share this basic core belief. You kind of have to believe this if you want mediation to work. And so hanging around with these nice do-gooders, these are people who carry around this attitude, it's bound to be a joyful thing. So those of us who are mediators, we do believe that people are intrinsically good. And if we give them the right opportunity, they will make choices that benefit the whole. But then there's this heavy responsibility that comes to the mediator. It's our responsibility to create that safe and atmosphere that will allow our disputants to give their best to rise to their better natures and find a resolution that both sides can live with. Next slide. Let's take a minute to read over this list of values promoted by mediation. Whether consciously or unconsciously, mediators are promoting these values when they are engaged in their work. They are kind of in the background, but they're constantly being reinforced by the mediator's words and actions. That's why I'm always encouraged to see mediation take place and being promoted in our schools. Hundreds and hundreds of schools in the US now have mediation programs in the elementary school, the middle school, and the high schools. And these mediation programs are very effective, and they really push forward less violence and more understanding. And so these values need to be taught and reinforced early in our youth, because when they become our society's leaders, if they have these values, they're going to become better leaders. Next slide. Let's remember that mediation is only one of numerous conflict resolution tools. So an important first step is for the mediator to evaluate the conflict to see if it is right and fit for the mediation process. Let me give you some examples of mediation conflicts that would be wrong for mediation. A union wants a strike to demonstrate its strength in order to attract members. They are not looking for a quick settlement until they've had the opportunity to flex their muscles and get some media coverage. So no, you wouldn't take that case on as a mediation. Second case, a civil rights group, they want to bring what they believe is a landmark case to court to establish a legal precedence. They don't want to settle out of court. Okay, so you can tell right away that their goal is not to strike a compromise with the other side, but they want to actually put into law something that they feel is very important. A third example, and this is an example that I actually mediated, an armored car company is trying to get rid of their union. So they have no interest in making compromises, signing a contract. They want to force the union to strike them so they can hire replacement workers and break the union. Now, in this particular situation, I had no choice. I had to take this case because it's what my job required. But it became quickly evident that this case was not going to settle. And they did end up with a strike. And they did break the union. Okay. Next slide. These are the best conditions for successful mediations. So if you are trying to evaluate a case and whether you should take that case on as a mediator, these are the things you want to watch for. And if all these conditions are present, then you can be assured that you have a very good chance that you'll be able to solve this case successfully. And the good thing about mediations, when they're done with the right people, is that it does build a relationship. People don't end up being enemies after a mediation because they've worked together and collectively to solve a problem. Okay, can I go next slide? A final word on agreements. Well, being the third eye at the table, the mediator often will see the whole situation more clearly than the disputants. And he may have some ideas about how to solve it. But I can tell you from my own experience that even though I had a really great idea for how to solve a conflict, if I proposed it too early, both parties would not accept it. The mediator's tool, his whole way of mediating is to have the parties come to their own conclusions and draw out their own solutions. And so what you do, these kinds of mediated behaviors will help that happen. Every time you have a statement, everything you say, you're trying to promote respect for both parties so that they will have better respect for each other. You're trying to promote a mutual problem-solving atmosphere. You have to be the optimistic cheerleader for the mediation process to keep hope alive. Because when people come to mediation, it's because they're frustrated and they're discouraged because they haven't been able to solve these problems by themselves. So you are kind of like their last hope. And so you always have to be optimistic. You always have to be positive that this mediation process is going to work, even though they don't see the end right now, to keep things going. So the last thing I'm going to do with you, next slide, please. This wouldn't be a good present. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. This one, yeah. The media agreement belongs, okay. This is a pop quiz, and this is the last part of this presentation. Do anybody have an answer to this question? What is one of the most common reasons that women give for separating from their partners? If you answered, he doesn't listen to me, you're right. Next slide. I want to share with you this last slide. This is the most effective tool for mediators. And if you take one thing away from this presentation, take this. Because once you understand and practice active listening, I guarantee it will be a valuable lifelong friend for you. Active listening is the most effective tool you can use during mediation, facilitation, any negotiation, or even family arguments. It's also the most effective way to calm down an angry person, which I will go more into during our Q&A, our question and answer session later if you wish. Active listening also has many personal benefits. If you are a good active listener, people will think you are smarter. Sensitive people will admire your EQ. It will raise your dating and popularity score, and it will improve your relationship with your partner. So let me quickly just run through these. Body language. Use your body to say, I'm listening. This means good eye contact. Don't be answering texts on your phone while your wife is talking to you about important things. Kind of direct your body towards whoever's speaking, and nod with I hear you. Let them know that you're listening. 2, ask open-ended questions and suspend judgment. Don't ask yes and no questions. Open-ended questions gives the other person an opportunity to share their story. 3, when you're giving them feedback, acknowledge their emotions as well as their content. So you can wow, I can really see you're upset about Bill not calling you this afternoon. Why did that bother you? Then 4, reframe the concerns and options to get the parties to think about the problem in a different way. So reframing you're mediating a dispute between neighbors over a dog who constantly digs up a neighbor's garden. One neighbor might say, Frank, if your dog comes over to my yard and digs up my expensive tulip bulbs again that I spent all weekend planting, I'm going to sue you for everything you're worth. So as a mediator, you might reframe that as, Bob, what I hear you saying is that when Frank's dog comes over to your yard and digs up the planting that you worked so hard on, you get frustrated and annoyed and you want to find a solution. So you repeat what the other person says, but in a less dramatic way, and get them to think about it in a different way. And finally, you summarize key points and check with the speakers to make sure that you're accurate and complete. It's not difficult to understand or to use, but the challenge on active listening is to be mindful enough to know when to engage it and to do it in your own natural way. Last slide. Okay, so this is just a short introduction, and I hope it gives you an interest in pursuing these different methods further. But the one thing about mediation is you can really do no harm. So if you even try to engage with people, and we all are mediators in some, as a mother, as a sister, as a brother, as a boss, as an employee, we all end up in mediating whether we like to or not, or whether we're taught to or not. But now that you have some ideas about what it means and the steps and the principles, you can only get better at it. And I do encourage you to practice mediation and active listening. And you'll find that you'll be more confident as you go through it. So I think now is the time for our small groups. Johanna, you want to take it from here?
Yes, thank you so much for this input, Jan. I'll just take a second to go back to my talk